For people that are not staying for this panel, could you take your conversations outside the tent, please? We would really appreciate it. Thank you. And those of you that are here to enjoy the foodie discussion, please have a seat. Thank you, everybody. Just a quick reminder to turn off your cell phones. Turn off your ringer on your cell phones, please. And that annoying little ding when you get a text, if you could turn that off too, that would be great. If you're not staying for the panel, could you take your conversations outside the tent, please? Thank you so much. A few reminders. Right after this panel, all of our panelists will be going to the signing tent, and you can buy one of their books from Bunch of Grapes and meet them over at the signing tent for further discussion. I'll be buying Stephen's book after this, but I'm not sure if I'll make it over right away, so you'll have to sign it later. A few other things. Turn off your phones. We talked about that. Book signings. Don't go hungry. And now I'm going to introduce the panel so we can keep it moving. And I'm very excited. This panel will go for a little bit longer until 12:10. So, and then our next panel will be at 12:15. So this morning's third panel will discuss eating our stories with our moderator, Ligaya Mishan, is that right? Thank you. And with our guests, Julia Blanter, Jessica Harris, Eric Kim, and Stephen Satterfield. This stellar panel of food writers, historians, and a chef invite us to explore the rich terrain of foodways, stories of place and community, creativity and cultural fusion, celebration of diversity, and the joys of food. If you're not staying for the panel, could you take your conversations outside the tent, please? Thank you so much. Our guests today are Julia Blanter, a culinary adventurer with extensive experience in kitchens and restaurants all around the world. Born in Sydney, Australia, she has lived in many places in the UK, Europe, and the US, including most recently on Martha's Vineyard. Her book, The Martha's Vineyard Cookbook, 100 recipes from the island's restaurants, farmers, fishermen, and food artisans, is an edible tour across the island's 6 towns. Jessica Harris is the author of 17 books, including the award-winning High on the Hog, which inspired the hit Netflix series of the same name. I need to put that on my Netflix list to watch. Harris served as a culinary consultant for the Smithsonian's African American Museum, and her latest bestseller, Braided Heritage, explores the rich fusion of Indigenous, European, and African food traditions. Eric Kim is a New York Times staff food columnist, and his recipes come to my inbox all the time. I think they probably come to yours as well. Formerly a senior editor at Food 52, where he amassed a devoted readership for his Table of One column, and he hosts regular videos on the New York Times cooking YouTube channel and writes a monthly column for the New York Times Magazine. His cookbook, Korean American, Food That Tastes Like Home, was an instant New York Times bestseller. And his collection of essays, Spaghetti Junction, is forthcoming from Crown Publishing. And Stephen Satterfield is a James Beard Award-winning chef and co-owner of Atlanta's celebrated Miller Union. Building on the acclaim of his debut, Root to Leaf, which I have, it's very good, his new cookbook, or newer cookbook, Vegetable Revelations, Inspiration for Produce-Forward Cooking, celebrates vegetables at the center of the plate. He's a leader in the progressive culinary community and active with Chefs Collaborative, Slow Food Atlanta, and Georgia Organics. And finally, our moderator, Ligaya Mishan, became a chief restaurant critic for the New York Times, not a chef restaurant critic. Maybe you are a chef critic as well, I don't know. A chief restaurant critic for the New York Times in 2025, based in New York City. She started reviewing restaurants in 2007, first for the New Yorker and then New York Times, where she wrote the Hungry City column, devoted to New York's tiny, often immigrant-run neighborhood spots. And now I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for joining us today for what I'm really looking forward to, just being in this illustrious company and hearing all of your thoughts. I wondered if we could start. I often think about with with food and food writing. This line from the philosopher Lin Yutang, where he says, "What is patriotism but the love of the food one ate as a child?" So I wanted to ask you all to share with us either your most beloved food from childhood or your most hated.
I'll start. So I would say my most beloved food from childhood would be a warm buttermilk biscuit that my grandmother just baked with some of her strawberry rhubarb preserves and melty butter on top. Definitely. And I don't like canned green peas. They're really gross.
Oh, I really wanted to come up with the most hated, but I can't think of anything right now. I think for me, anything with the flavor of sesame oil and seaweed has always been the taste of my childhood, and that involves usually my mom's kimchi fried rice. It's kind of my homecoming meal. Whenever I come to Atlanta from New York, she always has a pot of it kind of waiting for me, and then when I leave, because I usually drive up from Atlanta to New York, she kind of packs it for me, and it keeps really well. That's mine. Yeah.
Mine is very simple. I guess Jessica's story is that my mother found me sitting in the middle of the kitchen eating an onion like an apple. So I like onions. Yeah.
For me, it would be pilmeni, which are Ukrainian dumplings. My family is Ukrainian. I'm the first-born Australian in the family, and so pilmeni were a labor of love, like all dumplings are. It's a whole day of making the filling and rolling out the pastry and filling and folding and then boiling, and it's either served with sour cream or butter and vinegar, white vinegar, and a lot of dill, but always sour cream. And I can eat bowls and bowls and bowls, like most people can eat bowls of dumplings. But most hated, boiled buckwheat, kasha. Ukrainian food is a lot of boiled buckwheat. There's no butter, there's no sour cream, it's just boiled buckwheat, and it's gray on the plate, and it's not that delicious. So more pilmeni for me.
So I love starting with this because I think, as you can hear, all of these are stories. So when we talk about food, we're always telling a story. And it's a story about people, not just us as individuals, but of the communities we were born into, the communities we seek out, the communities we embrace, the communities we maybe resist. And it's also, but food is also, it tells so many stories about the way we live now. It's a story of place, both the literal land where things grow, but also this landscape of the mind, perhaps, a place that has history, multiple histories often, that can be mythic, but is also lived experience. And food is a story of time, how the way we eat over centuries and millennia has changed with the crossing of borders, the violence of conquest and colonization, and the hard labor of survival. So much is happening when we talk about food. And I'm really excited to hear from all of you. And at the end, we're also going to open up the floor and take questions, because I want to know what you're thinking about and what you want to know. But maybe we could start, if we're going to talk about storytelling, talk about place. And since we're in Martha's Vineyard, I'd love to start with Jessica and Julia, because Martha's Vineyard is a big part of both of your books. And Jessica, I know you were saying you've been here since, is it 1957, you said?
That's right.
Yeah, so how does Martha's Vineyard, how do the stories of Martha's Vineyard come through in the food in your books?
Well, actually, the thing is that the book is about what I'm calling the origin story of American food. It's about the foundational food of the United States. It's called Braided Heritage because there are 3 strands to the braid: Native American, European American, specifically the Spanish, the French, the Dutch, and we always forget. The Spanish, the French, the British, the Dutch, and the French in order. And then African Americans, and you put it all together and you get the foundational food of the United States. Why do I say that? Because there are 11 portraits of individuals, and the book opens with a person of first contact. That would be Julie Vanderhoop, who many of you know from the Orange Peel Bakery in Aquinnah. And so she gives recipes that speak to that and that, talk about that. And so the vineyard appears as such in the book.
Yeah, and she's also in your book too, Julia.
She is. I was very honored that she wrote the foreword to the book and talks about her childhood, clamming and foraging with her siblings, and that is a tradition that many vineyarders continue to do today. We clam, we grab the family, there's hunting, there's still very much that close connection to where your food comes from. And that's what I wanted to highlight in the book, that we have this wonderful relationship to our farmers and fishermen, and even if you're not on the vineyard, wherever you are, I encourage everyone to create that relationship with where you get your food from.
Mm-hmm. And can you both tell us a little bit about the vineyard itself is a braid, or maybe beyond, has so many different traditions that are present here. So how would you describe, what is the food of Martha's Vineyard? What are some of the traditions that you see here?
Actually, one of the reasons I wrote the book was because a friend asked me, don't you sit around eating lobster rolls and chowder all day? There is this idea that, there is this wonderful summer vision that people think is what we sit around and do all day and all year. But it is a real place with real people and real food and real needs and many challenges. I think Sue Ellen said it beautifully last night. This is a wonderful island, but it's a complicated island, and so the food is incredible, and we fetishize the corn and tomatoes and strawberries of summer and the lobster rolls, and that is, one of the gifts of visiting over the summer. But we have incredible fall and winter produce as well, and I encourage everyone to visit our farms. We have Beetlebung around the corner and these wonderful farms that continue to nourish us through the seasons, and there is so much creativity that you can have with these wonderful ingredients beyond the summer. And then the diversity of the island, that not a lot of people know about. There is an incredible Brazilian community, and I have a few recipes from our Brazilian friends and neighbors. This really is the United Nations on the island. For a small island, we have so many different cultures and accents, and I think it's a great adventure to be curious and go beyond, the things that you might expect of the vineyard, and explore the true flavors of what's on offer here.
Yeah, well, I don't remember the year, but I wrote a book called one of those 17 that she mentioned, God help us all. It was called The Martha's Vineyard Table. Nobody's heard of it because it came out the year the bunch of grapes burned. So it's wonderful. That kind of thing. But in it, there are recipes from the Jamaican community, from the Portuguese community, which is different from the Brazilian community, from certainly the native peoples, from the African American community with Southern recipes. This is that place where a lot of different things come together and a lot of different people come together, especially on a plate.
Yeah, and for Stephen and Eric, so you're both coming from Atlanta. So I'm curious for the two of you if you feel like your Atlantas are different Atlantas and yet the same Atlanta. So could you talk a little bit about how Atlanta informs who you are as cooks and the work you do?
So I've been cooking in Atlanta for decades, and one of the most impressive things about it to me is the growing community and the farmers market scene that we have there. We have multiple markets across the metro area. We have farms coming into the city midweek to deliver to restaurants. And it's something that binds us all together because we all have this fabric of, woven in our work. All the good chefs are buying the good produce, and that's where it starts. And that's always been my inspiration. Once I found my path, I realized that the seasonality of food is really what inspires chefs the most, I think, and it's the thing that is not constant, where you can always get your grass-fed beef or your pastured birds, but the vegetables and the fruits are constantly evolving throughout the season. So it's a very fertile place, and there are so many growers, so much more now than when I started cooking. It's kind of mind-blowing how it has crescendoed into such a booming commerce, basically. And when I go to the Freedom Market at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Center on Saturday mornings, which I missed this morning, but it is hard to find a parking place. It's mobbed with people, and it's a real snapshot of the community that really cares about food. So it's wonderful to see, and it always kind of gets me going when I go there. Even if I'm in a hurry and trying to get back with all the goods, I still will get inspiration from the people there too, because everyone is just waiting in a line to get the best tomatoes and peaches and corn. So
My relationship to Atlanta is very tied to place, but also it's tied to time, because I left Atlanta to go to college in New York when I was 18, and my version of Atlanta really only begins in 1983 when my father immigrated to Atlanta from South Korea. And when I got my book deal for a book that's now called Korean American Food That Tastes Like Home, it was originally sold as The Essentials of Korean American Cooking, or something like that. And the effort was to travel the United States and try to find, some kind of semblance of a definition for the term Korean American cooking versus Korean cooking. But then we went into lockdown, so I couldn't do that anymore, and I had to pivot. And it actually really worked out, because Atlanta ended up becoming a main character in the book. I moved back home in my late 20s to live with my parents again, and it was a very strange time warp. My mother and I cooked together for 9 months, and we were both mining our own shared histories, from the 90s to the early 2000s, and so what I ended up doing was really telling the story of specifically Koreans cooking in Atlanta, and that already filled up a book. And then that kind of taught me, as I was trying to define this thing, that it was not a great, that it was kind of futile to do so. And then when the book came out, right as I was finishing the book, I started working at the New York Times and writing about Korean food there, and sort of extending my research to, try out different stories, and I got a lot of feedback and a lot of hate from the Korean American community. Koreans didn't care that I was, playing around with the ingredients and telling the story of specifically Koreans in America, but Korean Americans all over the country really had a specific idea about what Korean food should be, and I kind of had to learn the hard way that it was such a political process. It's a political process to talk about a minority cuisine in a majority setting, especially somewhere like the New York Times. So my version of kimchi fried rice, for instance, is going to be very different from someone else's, and when it publishes on the front page of the New York Times food section, and if a Korean American person who's never seen themselves on the page before, if they see that and they're like, my mom doesn't put seaweed on that, so that's not Korean. So I still hear that all the time, and so at first it really made me anxious that I was getting it wrong or something. But then I kind of realized, just through all my reporting, my research, I kind of became more of an expert in the subject, and it became almost a rallying cry that place is really important, so is time, and everyone has a different story to tell in regard to these buckets of experience. And so Korean American, I really do think that it took maybe 4 years for Korean food to show up in mainstream media, and for other Korean Americans to feel empowered to then tell their own version of the story instead of what we all wanted to deliver as a message to non-Koreans was Korean food. So that's my long way of saying Atlanta became this really I always had something to say about Atlanta because there were certain quirky dishes that I couldn't explain unless I went and did the research. For instance, Atlanta has these very specific hot wings, and I found the guy who originally started doing them in the 80s, and then they showed up in bars, and Korean business owners opened these wing shops that had a very the sauce was it wasn't like buffalo sauce, it was more vinegary, and I hadn't seen it anywhere else. And telling that story felt really nice because at the end of the day, I realized what my purpose is, or what I'm doing is trying to get a record of it before those people, go away. I mean, they're my dad's age, and already those wing shops are kind of going away because they're so tied to one decade. So it's been nice to bring those stories up so that they can just be recorded.
Do you have a hot wing story yourself?
Well, we butcher our own birds, so we often have wings for family meal. And everyone takes a stab at a different sauce. Atlanta's known for lemon pepper wet, which is a very specific style. And I don't know the origin story of that. It would be fun. We should do a little story on lemon pepper wet.
Yeah. I tried to find the origin, and it was actually very difficult to find it. Yeah.
Can you describe what goes into lemon pepper wet?
It's got. I think it's basically. Seems like it started with like lemon pepper seasoning.
Yeah, the store-bought lemon pepper seasoning.
Yeah, exactly.
Like McCormick blend or something.
And my theory is that it started in the strip clubs and made its way beyond the walls of the strip club.
And I found kind of where the Korean men who immigrated alone to Atlanta, this is the connection that I made in my research, but they found these wings in strip clubs, and so they replicated it with their own version. What I really love about lemon pepper, though, or any kind of huge food culture that stems from a store-bought item is, I think the specialness of lemon pepper isn't just that it's, black pepper and lemon taste great together. They're both like citrusy and fruity, but it's more that that spice blend also has a little sweetness, sugar. It has MSG. It has savoriness. It has. There are ways to replicate that from scratch, and I think that's the full story of lemon pepper. It's a very well balanced kind of bite of food, I think.
Wow. Are there hot wings on the Vineyard, or are there hot wings in your own experiences, Julia and
Just
Jessica?
the ones we make at home.
Yeah. Jessica, do you have a hot wing, not necessarily Vineyard based, but a
I'm
hot
gonna
wing?
no. I don't. I mean, it's not something that I
That's part of your.
crave or look for. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I just have no idea.
This is fantastic. So it's just so interesting the way things that we know, one person might know so well and take for granted. I have to say that I remember when I grew up in Hawaii, and I went back to Hawaii to speak at a school, and I told them, on the mainland, they eat chili all by itself, not with rice. And there was a gasp. It was considered an outrage. As we've been talking about all of these places, of course, there's this larger place that we haven't been talking about directly, but that informs everything. And I think this is the first line of Jessica's cookbook is, what is America? And as we are talking about all the food we eat, we're all talking about foods eaten in America. We are all Americans, and I think it is this question of how do we eat now in America? Because it's not the way we were eating as a country 50 years ago, and the way that people eat in certain parts of the country is not the same as others. But there have been such massive changes in the past 2 decades. So I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you see the way we eat now and how it's changed?
We definitely have so much more access to information. So with that comes sort of like the globalization of people's pantries. And that was something I really kind of leaned into with Vegetable Revelations, was where my first book was more about kind of like pure Southern ingredients and seasonal produce. Vegetable Revelations was definitely like the awareness of how we have so much access to products that we didn't have before, to recipes and techniques that we've been learning about from each other's cultures, and I think that was an exciting way to like explore how that could be applied to vegetables. But it definitely seems to me that there's a lot more awareness of other cultures and how it can be on your plate at home.
Well, I mean, I think if I was just taking notes on the condiments in my refrigerator, because I think that speaks to the fact that have become culinary omnivores and pretty international culinary omnivores. I have kimchi, I have barbecue sauce, I have soy and tamari, I have multiple types of mustard, including a yuzu mustard that I got in France, ketchup, 3 different kinds of mayonnaise because I do not make my own. You just look at that and think about the world and how that works, not just in terms of my particular taste buds, but how so many different things are now our normal pantry staples. I can say without fear of contradiction, I'm the oldest person on this panel. And I grew up eating chicken pot pie and Swanson TV dinners. We ain't doing that no more. So that what we have is a different and way more expanded world and way more expanded culinary world. And we can toggle back and forth. We talk in terms of language about code switching. We do an awful lot of culinary code switching. Best gift ever, 14 pounds of scup from the Seafood Collaborative last summer. What did I do with it? Steamed it with ginger and scallion and soy sauce. That's not Black American. Okay. I also fried some. I gave some away to some folks who are here and want it back this year because they're not catching as much scup. But the bottom line is, you look at that, you think about that, you begin to in some way see that what we eat is so completely different from what we used to eat. No more TV dinners, and I hate those canned peas too. But equally, no more a lot of things. That chicken pot pie, gone. That grilled cheese sandwich, yeah, but it's Jarlsberg. Everything has morphed, changed, and moved on.
Absolutely.
I love that one of the most requested recipes in the book is a red pepper dip from Catboat, Muhammara, with fresh pita. And a few years ago, I don't know who would be asking for muhammara, and I have a full mudamas, which is an Egyptian bean stew served at breakfast from Elia's in Opalafs. And so people are asking for these recipes, and they're going to those pages, and they're so grateful to see the recipes and the stories behind them in the book. And I just love that that's what people are looking for in my book, and not just the chowders and those classic New England recipes, that they recognize that the Vineyard has, a lot of depth to what is on our plate here. So, yeah.
A big part of my job as a recipe developer for NYT Cooking is and something that I just like to do in my pastime, I like to walk through grocery stores and kind of study the shelves. And because they're changing constantly and they really tell you what's happening in culture. I also look at the dictionary for that. But it's really fun to see how rapidly it can change. And I love to tell this story that when I started writing Korean American, I had to drive, 20 minutes down the road to go to the H Mart. Not bad. But then a few years later, not that much longer, I was able to go to the 5-minute down the road grocery store because it had a whole shelf for like gochujang and the Korean fermented chili paste. It had even the powders and so I think it's really strange to be. I found it really strange and exciting to write about a cuisine that was rapidly changing in real time and changing in terms of access and knowledge and it was this direct relationship, I think, from media to purveyors to grocery store shelves and then consumers, and watching that happen is it felt like a video game.
Well, I wish we could do like a refrigerator and larder tour of everybody on this panel, because I love to peek in other people's kitchens. one thing I wanted to think about is like, so this idea of like the grilled cheese, but now it has fancy cheese in it. But there are still some dishes. Are there dishes that can't be improved by better ingredients? Like some people will say that s'mores are ruined if you use better chocolate and better marshmallows. And I'm just curious, like also about this question of, is there sort of a compulsive search now, a compulsive desire to optimize every dish, to make everything the best? And how do you think of that when you're eating? Is it okay to sometimes just enjoy a roadside taco that may not be made with the best quality meat? What do you guys think?
I think you're talking about the taste of memory. And the taste of memory is something very different. It's the taste of my mother's mac and cheese. It's the taste of whatever your grandmother did, that biscuit you were talking about, Stephen. It's the thing that you remember as being absolutely sublime, but it's the memory of it that's absolutely sublime. Might have been pretty awful, but you remember it as being absolutely just magnificent because that's how it's fixed in your head. And, I think that that's one of the things that you're talking about when you're talking about those tacos. If it's the first taco you've ever had, if you're on a road trip and you're hungry and you pull into the right place, damn, that thing is good. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So, I think that those are the things where we confuse because we're so much about the perfection of it all, as opposed to the reality of it. And sometimes the reality is, the thing that you need to hold on to, not so much that, oh my God, but it's just that.
Yeah.
Nostalgia is a very powerful emotion.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times food can be the trigger for that.
Think Proust.
Yes. I like to think about, like Miller Union, my restaurant in Atlanta, the flagship, will have been open for 16 years this fall. And so at this point, we are considered a classic. And there's certain dishes that if they don't reappear, there may be a stampede or some kind of uprising. And some of those things are based on traditional Southern cooking, and others are things that we created in our professional kitchen that became classics over time with the repetition. And so it's stuff like we have a field pea and boiled peanut salad, and it's a dish of two different types of legumes mixed together with roasted peppers and tomatoes, ricotta cheese, and crispy peanuts and mint on top. And it has a cult following. And if we do not bring it back when peanut season starts, which is right about now, and goes through October, it's one of those things that people just start calling and saying, is it back yet? Or fried okra, or country captain chicken, some of those kind of like fun historical Southern recipes that just, they like the way we do it, and they're going to keep coming back for it, and they won't be satisfied until they get it in their mouths.
Stephen, I have a question, which would be, are those dishes still the same dishes that you first made, or have the ingredients changed, or has the recipe
They've absolutely
morphed somewhat?
changed.
So, yeah.
So the country captain sauce now has dehydrated mango powder and fermented chili powder and other things that expand and deepen the flavor. Our fried okra is always the same method and technique, where we create the slime with the salt and the water and agitate it, so that's the wet part of the dredge. And it's always cornmeal and cornstarch and salt, and that's it. And it's crispy and fried, but this year it has black lime powder, and we're serving it with a pimenton aioli. And so, there's always a little nudge in a different direction over time that we have to keep it fresh for ourselves and for the guests too.
Do your guests mind that it's the recipe just, wait, that's not what I had last
Some
year?
of them have some things to say.
Okay.
And others like, I really like this version better. So it's, it's risky, but it's also fun, and it's nice to push the boundaries a little bit.
I love walking people through why they might have liked this thing from their childhood. And I'm a total nostalgist, and it's true that maybe a tray of Stouffer's mac and cheese reheated in the microwave isn't gonna be as good as I remember, but actually it's still pretty freaking good. But
Oh, you
but-
have met my mother's.
but I remember researching that story for the Times, and I loved learning and realizing why all of these children of immigrants love that specific dish, because it was their association with mac and cheese, first of all, but it was also the texture, which is from citric acid, sodium citrate, which is the thing that makes the cheese stay really creamy and melty, almost like nacho cheese. And then like another thing for me, I love chasing these taste memories. Pink lemonade, I did a whole magazine column on that, and and found that the reason I like, that soda fountain, Tropicana or whatever, high C pink lemonade, is because of tartaric acid, which is in red fruits like grapes and cherries, and so I like guiding readers through that journey, and then at the end being like, and now you can make it from scratch, and it's not that hard, and it's like making a fruit syrup out of rhubarb or cherries or strawberries, and then making your own homemade lemonade, and just letting people know why it tastes the way it does helps them make those decisions for themselves, how to like make the adult version of that thing they really like.
And they reverse engineered pink lemonade into now a pink lemon that has been hybridized.
I've had that. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the pink lemon is a result of the nostalgia of pink lemonade.
Ooh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I was tasting those to research this story, and I just felt like they tasted like regular lemons.
Yeah, they got some blush color to them.
Yeah.
It's like a white Zinfandel.
Or like that white rosé we had last night.
Do you have a nostalgic food?
Oh my gosh. I do, and I wanted to say that I have a couple of meatball recipes in the book, and we all have our go-to midweek meatball recipe, so you think, why do we need another one? But one of them I included is from the Allen Farm, where you can really taste the place. So you have beautiful Allen Farm lamb, which is seasoned from the ocean, that is infused in the grass that the sheep graze upon. And then it's mixed with Mermaid Farm feta and yogurt. So you have the tang from the feta and you have the creaminess from the yogurt. You have this incredible meatball that really tastes of the vineyard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ready in 20 minutes, so it is a midweek dinner. And I'm not saying it's the best meatball recipe, and it shouldn't take pride of place maybe, but it is such a special recipe that I really think highlights the incredible producers on the island and gets you something unique and special.
Yeah. So I'm curious, in talking about food as storytelling, and thinking about what a story is. So a recipe in and of itself is a story, is a literary form, right? So you have a list. We've got a kind of standard. It's like a poem with a structure. It has the ingredients and then the steps. But within that, there's so much room, and both the room in terms of what actually happens in the reality of cooking, and then also on the page. And I was thinking about this because with a recipe, as with all writing, there's this challenge of taking an experience, something that is meant to be experienced by the body, something that's vivid and vital and alive and speaks to all the senses, and translating it to something on the page, which is fixed, which is just one thing, and is meant to be understood by the mind. So I'm curious for all of you, how do you approach the writing of a recipe itself, especially if it's just a bunch of actions, or even a recipe that has a history or an oral history? How does it turn into words on a page, and how should we as cooks, reading the recipes in your cookbooks, understand those?
It's funny, my background is writing recipes and food content in Australia and in the UK, and our recipes are much shorter. There's a lot of common sense that goes into recipes in cookbooks that are not American cookbooks, and here the recipes are much longer. You do have to handhold the home cook a lot more through the process. But I did take some delight in a few recipes that are not technically, you don't need a recipe, but the banana fairy sundae from Mad Martha's is less a recipe, but it's more of that reminder of the childhood nostalgia, the joy of getting whipped cream over your face and on your nose and, you know, sprinkles all over you. And so that's how I wrote the recipe. This is not as much a recipe, but make it rain sprinkles, you know, rivers of hot fudge, and just get into that pure joy of a summer sitting by the water and being messy, you know.
Lovely.
I have a little mantra that's kind of stupid, but a recipe written is a dish once eaten. And I like to say that because I feel like recipe literacy is pretty low just across the board, meaning I think when people see a recipe, for instance, on NYT Cooking, let's say, I don't know, a tzatziki, there are going to be a lot of opinions in the comments about why it's not an authentic tzatziki. You see the theme here. Because, you know, people think they know, like, the definitive version, but my whole thing is, like, did you not read the story before it where I said I went to Germany and had the best tzatziki of my life from those immigrants who came from Greece to this very remote town by the water? Anyway, so I like to remind people that a recipe that you see on the page, it's an account of something. It's one instance, and I like reminding people as well that a recipe is really just an approximation to get as close to that Platonic ideal or memory as possible. You'll never quite reach it because you can't go back in time. You can't travel back in time. But it's sort of a writer's way to get as close as possible, and I think that's good enough sometimes.
Eric, I love that. I was thinking about the stories, or the header notes is what they're called at the beginning of a recipe, and almost all of mine are either someone showed me how to make something and it was a light bulb moment for me, or it's something that I remember learning and thinking, if I learned this as an adult cook, then there's surely people that have not learned this yet, and I want to share with them why it was so important to me as a foundation for my cooking. And so I think sharing, like, the discovery of a technique or a flavor combination, or even just like telling the story of another chef making something and me trying it and then wanting to learn how to make that. And I think those are sort of like the three pillars of how I pick recipes that I want to share with the home cook.
I hate recipes. It's actually, I was looking something up and came across an article headline, Jessica Harris hates recipes. It's like, okay. I hate recipes because we've dumbed down cooking. If you look at antiquarian cookbooks, if you look at take a knob of butter. Well, what's a knob of butter? Cooks used to be able to cook. Now people read and try to reproduce the picture because everything has, food porn. A picture of that gorgeous dish that the food stylist has prepped and prepped beautifully, so that your recipe is supposed to look like that. And if it doesn't, hell befalls the recipe writer. But you talked about the Platonic ideal. I thought Heraclitus. You can't step twice in the same river. Okay, that dish that was created that way is never going to happen again. If you're trying to make peanut brittle in New Orleans as opposed to in Denver, you got different stuff you've got to do. And so we assume that this is all going to be standardized. But it's not. And it doesn't work that way. We handhold. It's a process essay. That's what a recipe is, basically. You do this, then you do that, then you do that. It's a process essay. I used to teach, 50 years Queens College teaching English. I had my students write process essays. I made them write a recipe for food they grew up with. But you learn how to this comes first, that's next, and so on and so forth. And you're describing the process. The head note is, for me, where the meat is, because it's the thing that gives you the story of the recipe. It's the thing that puts the recipe into context. It's the thing that gives you the history of the recipe. It's the thing that makes it work another kind of way. And when my head notes grew long enough, my editor said, okay, I think you just need to write a narrative book, and that was high on the hog. So there it is. And I can't cook from my own recipes. I'm an intuitive cook. I read 3 or 4 recipes and then decide what I'm going to do. And I find that many people do that. They don't necessarily. But then you've got people who have, I can't make this recipe. I'm home, it's Sunday night, the shops are closed. I don't have any cinnamon. Leave the cinnamon out, figure out something else. That's the problem. We are very much channeled into, it's gotta be this. I don't like recipes.
I think one of the fun things about, well, it can be fun. So I was going to say comments can be terrible. Eric, it's true. But occasionally it's sort of fun to look at the New York Times cooking comments because people are like, I didn't have this, this, and this, but then I did this, this, and this. Come completely different, and it was amazing. And then you get a whole thread where people are so excited because they're bringing their own creativity and artistry. So maybe there is hope out there that people are not taking recipes as gospel, that they are willing to play. Just before we open up for questions, I was wondering if each of you could share with the audience, because everybody here is going to buy all of your cookbooks and take them home. So what advice would you give? What's the one recipe they should start with tonight from your cookbook?
I would say in Vegetable Revelations, in the beginning pages, there's sections on condiments and sauces and crunchy toppings and things that could be interchangeable in their use on different types of vegetables. And I would start there and just pick one and make it and put it on whatever vegetable you have in your house and start there.
At the start of this, I was talking about the flavor of sesame oil and seaweed, and there's a shrimp and grits in my book that the grits are seasoned kind of like a Korean rice porridge. So you add butter, sesame oil, and the seaweed, and just that flavor. I just want you to taste it because it's so elemental to me. And the shrimp is marinated in a little gochugaru, which is the Korean red pepper powder that makes kimchi red. And then there's like more butter, and it's a very nice like Atlanta Korean dish, I think.
I would say 2 dishes, and basically because they're Vineyard connected. So Julie Vanderhoop's clear broth clam chowder. We're all used to the dairy-based clam chowder, but there is a clear broth clam chowder. And we're on the island. There are clams. It's a good thing. And then Abigail Rosen McGrath, and hats off to Abigail. Love you. Salmon poached in milk. Okay, it's a dish, Abigail, in my book, when I get to African Americans, I don't, not obviously, but I don't talk about places of origin because we don't know. But I talk about trends. So there's a thread on migration, and the person who represents that is a lady named Lenny Sorensen, who for many, many years was the African-American scholar in residence at Monticello. So she gives recipes based on her stepfather and father's migration from Louisiana to California. Abigail, who was Dorothy West's niece and whose mother was Helen Johnson's, was a Harlem Renaissance poet. Abigail's had no connections with the South. We think of African Americans, we go immediately to the South. Abigail's roots were Boston, and she was raised in New York City. She didn't go south till she was an adult. So there are recipes like salmon poached in milk. And then there are other folks, but Abigail's salmon poached in milk would definitely be a part of it.
I can attest to the clear clam chowder. It is wonderful. This is an easy one. So you're going to skip out of the book festival for just a few minutes and pop up to the Grey Barn to pick up their beautiful Eidolon cheese. And you will proof the dough for their Eidolon frosted cinnamon rolls. So you wake up tomorrow to fresh cinnamon rolls. How good does that sound? Before you come back to the festival, of course. And then you'll pair it with the double coffee syrup from Todd at Chilmark Coffee Company. And it's a great coffee syrup that you can have for your morning coffee and espresso martinis when you come back from that bike ride.
Fantastic. We'd love to open up the floor to questions. If people could come up to the microphone. So please, come to the microphone, line up. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Two microphones.
Thank you. This was great and fun. Sounds great. My two questions are, one, eating on the vineyard is we just came from the last set of panels. So eating on the vineyard is, the question is, how is affordable eating on the vineyard and throughout the country? Because many people are very upset because of the prices of things. So what do you respond to that? And then I'd also ask you to talk about RFK, if you're willing.
Wow. How much time do we have?
Starting off easy.
I can touch on the cost of food because I'm buying food at wholesale for my restaurants, and it's shocking how much food continues to increase year over year. Couple that with labor. People have been getting paid a lot more since the pandemic, which is great. It needed to change, but it is really tricky to run a restaurant that has high quality standards with good food products and good labor practices. It's a very tricky dance to find the right balance of value and also price accordingly so you don't go under. So our menu prices continue to rise in directions that we don't feel comfortable, and it's painful to change those numbers, but our business model won't work unless the numbers adjust to the cost of everything. And so it's pretty frustrating to see how we're pricing out people that would like to dine at our places that can't afford to because it's outside of their budget. And a lot of us look at us now as special occasion only, and it's really hurt our business because we used to be kind of like the everybody's place, and we're getting priced out of that model. So it's tricky and it's hard to watch. I'm not going to talk about RFK.
I talk about, in the head notes, some of the challenges that our farmers and fishermen deal with on the island. And, I think minimizing waste is something that we should all be aware of. But, the price of small-scale farming is indeed high. But when you think about big ag is subsidized, and so we have an unrealistic kind of expectation of what food should cost, and shopping at the farms is a privilege. It is not cheap, but I always say make the most of what you're able to purchase. So the roast chicken of dreams, as I call it, the recipe from North Tabor Farm is this incredible roast chicken recipe dressed with shiitakes and cherry tomatoes, and it's tarragon. It's gorgeous. And then I recommend that you save the bones and you make a beautiful stock from the leftover bones and any vegetables that you have that have maybe seen better days at the back of your fridge, and so try and get the most out of what you're able to buy from the farms and fishermen. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not going to say anything. Look at me. I do caution people to remember it's an island. Everything that you don't get that's produced here is coming in on a ferry. You've seen the trucks. That's part of why. But we live here. That's unfortunately the price of the ticket. That is simply it.
I'm gonna side answer the last question. I think my partner and I talk about this all the time. In the future when we make M&M cookies, I'm really convinced that they taste the way they do because of the food coloring on the outside. And so we're gonna be tracking, why these things taste the way they do, and we're gonna know, when those things go away. how that's going to affect our connection to nostalgia. I'm not going to try to replicate the flavor of that red food dye, but
Interesting.
Birthday cake flavor.
yeah.
Thank you. I didn't know actually what this panel was about, but I love stories and I love cuisine. And both stories and cuisine have a relationship to creativity, and both also have a relationship to consumption and production. So I'm curious what connection y'all make between consumption and production in either category or both.
I'm writing a collection of essays right now, and the essays will each end in a recipe. There's a little green bug on my coffee. And I find that I love walking from the desk to the kitchen, back and forth, when one gets too hard to do. And I think anyone who's a creative sort of understands when you reach a block. It happens in cooking too. And I think the best art happens when you're happy and when you're in the mood to do it. So I think I encourage people who are either writers or cooks, if they're struggling with either, to try the other thing and then go back and forth. It's this perfect little dance for me.
I think consumption and production are things I think a lot about. I also think about the waste stream a lot. It's shocking to me how much food is produced and how much is lost. And I've definitely campaigned a lot around food waste. I think it's a really serious problem in our country, and in other places they don't allow that to happen because it's so important to them. Is there a national emergency?
No, it's the noon bell.
Just the noontime whistle. He's good now, yeah? Yeah.
Noontime whistle. Wow, it sounds very ominous. They don't like to talk about food waste here. No, it's definitely like a big part of how we work in a professional kitchen. And I loved what you said about like saving the bones and making a stock. Like anything you can do to the food that is produced, there's a lot of energy and resources that go into it. So to see how much you can extend that as many times as possible before it ends up in what I would say the compost bin, because I also don't think food should go into landfills. I'm sure all of y'all are so into that already, but it's crazy to think how much food is produced in our country and how little regard there is to throwing something away, and it really can that can be changed the more we talk about it and raise the awareness. And I think one of the biggest things is just taking away the idea that food is always accessible, because to some people it's not. To a lot of us it is, and if something goes bad, we just go and get another one, but it's not the case for everybody. And so trying to look at your fridge and say, I'm not allowed to let any of this go to waste, I must cook it all. We get a farm box every week and we do that, and we feel a great sense of guilt if we don't. And so it's a great challenge to give yourself and to raise your respect of food as high as it possibly can go.
Just very quickly, I don't want to hear that sound again. That was scary. We're very fortunate on the Vineyard to have such a close connection to those that grow and harvest your food. And so that consumption is we're very mindful of consumption here. Everyone knows farmers and fishermen. The farmers market is so much part of people's lives here. And so I think it would be such a disservice if you wasted the food that people worked so hard to grow and raise that livestock. So I think we're very intentional here. And as I said earlier, have that conversation, get to know, even in the city, have a conversation with your butcher, your fisherman, the people that work at the restaurants that you enjoy. And that relationship, I think, helps you get closer to food, help you understand that there's so much that goes into it. It's not just a purchase on Fresh Direct back in the city. There is a lot that goes into the food that's on your plate. So I think having that intentionality with your purchase and who you buy it from, where your money is going, like that money when you buy something from a farm here is going into your neighbor's pocket. It's helping to fund the kids' education. You see the direct impact of shopping from farms here. And so I think we should all bring that intentionality to how we shop and consume.
I know we're tight on time, so it can always take this offline, but your taste is memory really resonated with me. And my grandmother served me Welsh rarebit, a great butterscotch sauce. Oh, and she made me eat liver. It occurred to me I should have asked her for these recipes, and maybe on Ancestry.com people can start posting recipes of their. But I was just wondering if you knew much of the history of Welsh rarebit butterscotch sauce. A good egg salad sandwich, too.
Fantastic.
Sounds very English.
Does anybody here have any inside
I have
knowledge on?
none. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, Welsh rarebit
No,
is a common people's food that it's just bread and cheese, right? Yeah. It's basically like an open face broiled cheese sandwich, essentially, but it's a sauce. I think it does have Worcestershire too.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember eating that at St. John in London and just thinking, like, I love the simplicity of how they have revered all the historical recipes of their culture and have carried that on. But yeah, the recipe, don't have it. Go to St. John.
They do a really good liver, St. John.
Nigella Lawson has a Welsh rarebit recipe.
Yes.
So I guess the lesson of this is always write down your mother's recipes.
Yes.
Does anyone else have any questions or want to come up to our microphones?
Well, I would say not just write down, but we all walk around with these video cameras that we call phones. Photograph it. Because writing it down, you're not going to get that little that goes into it, or when she ends it by going back after stirring clockwise to go counterclockwise to finish it. Photograph it along with writing it down. And then you'll also have the memory of the person with the recipe.
Yeah, that's smart.
That's nice.
I was wondering, you all have done so much. Oh, sorry. You all have done so much research into the past, into your own experiences. I wonder if you could each give like a prediction on maybe a future food trend, or even something that you wish in the future could get more attention. And I don't know if that reveals too much of what you're doing next with new books, but a little sneak peek.
Oh, fantastic, because I want to know the answer to this.
I hate food trends. They're so annoying because it can like make or break something. Like kale, it's like everyone was on kale and now it's like cauliflower, cabbage, one of my favorites. But I would like to see the turnip rise to the top. I challenge you all to start eating more turnips. They're wonderful, and there's so many different varieties.
We want turnips on TikTok.
Yes,
Let's
turnips
make it
on
happen.
TikTok. That's what I wish for.
I tried turnips once and they weren't very popular. The recipe. I was just thinking about this last night. Pandan is definitely on the rise. It's in America anyway. It's the subtle flavor and mostly the green color. I think people are really taking a liking to, and I see it kind of coming into the front now.
It's almost impossible to describe the flavor of pandan, but could you?
I think it kind of reminds me of coconut. Maybe it's really
Is it a fruit?
floral. It's
Vanilla?
a leaf. It's like a.
It's very floral. Some people say vanilla or hazelnut, but
yeah.
yet it's none of those things. So please go out and try it if you haven't already.
I don't know about, I have no crystal ball, but I would hope that we're beginning to see a trend of respect for the food of the African continent and an investigation of it. If you look at the cookbooks that have come out in the past year, there are an awful lot of, there's one on Ghana, there's one, and it's not just Africa, writ large, but it is regional and specific, and lots of really interesting things there, and hopefully that'll be a trend.
Yawande Kamalate. One of them, Yawande.
Exactly.
Kiana Moju.
Lots and lots.
Yeah, so many restaurants with African dishes actually are opening right now. So I think the moment has come.
Let us pray.
I also hate food trends, but I hope there's more of a curiosity about Native American cuisine and foodways and gardening, and just we have so much to learn, and there are wonderful books and exploring ingredients. You know, there are some websites that offer indigenous ingredients, but there's so much to learn, and you know, happy to share book recommendations, but you know, I think we should all start with Braided Heritage with some absolutely, and Julie's recipes in the book, and I'm sure that will open
In terms of Native American food, Julie's recipes are fabulous. The person you might want to know, though, is Sean Sherman, who is doing what he calls decolonizing food. And so what he does, he's based in Minneapolis, and he has removed all of the ingredients that came with contact. So there's no pork. Pigs came with the Spaniards. There's no beef. Beef came with the Spaniards. There's no wheat. Wheat came with other Europeans. And so he cooks this amazing food using ingredients that were here. And it's fascinating. It's worth looking at. He's got a book out. He's got a new one coming out probably in 26. Sean Sherman.
That's a great way to end. Thank you so much. Does that mean I can't use chili crisp is my question, because I'm obsessed with chili crisp. I just have a really important announcement. If you are parked in the EMT lot on the grass, you must go move your car right now. Nobody can be parked on the grass in the EMT lot, so please go move your car. My next announcement is our amazing panel will be moving to the book tent, or excuse me, to the signing tent to sign books for you. So please go to buy their book and then go to the book tent and get them signed. And let's have a round of applause. Thank you.